What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through the top 10 waiver wire pickups heading into week 6 of the NFL season. I think last week, the waiver wire was super wide receiver heavy. I think there are still a few really nice wide receivers out there, but I think there are also some very interesting options at the running back position. These are going to be guys that are rostered in 40% or fewer leagues using the ESPN Fantasy Football waiver wire. And this week, I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm going to try to order them by the priority that I would want to pick them up. Obviously, there's going to be some variance based on your positional need. Do you need a short-term guy? Do you need a long-term guy? But kind of doing my best in that department. If you guys enjoy, smash that like button. Any questions, drop them down below. But let's start off here with, in my opinion, the number one pickup. We have Tank Bigsby rostered in 9.5% of leagues. And he actually went out and outsnapped a healthy Travis Etienne 23-22. He also outcarried Travis Etienne 13-6. And he rushed on those 13 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. At this point, Tank Bigsby is playing too well to just be like taken off the field or like completely, have his usage taken over by Travis Etienne. He's leading all running backs in rushing yards over expected per attempt. After the game, Doug Peterson came out, said Travis Etienne was still their guy. But at the very least, like Tank Bigsby has come in, he has forced a committee. He's obviously the clear-cut handcuff if Travis Etienne were to go down. And it seems like he's gaining some weekly value. Like with these bye weeks, these injuries, it would not be crazy to throw Tank Bigsby into your lineup. And I mean, this is a coaching staff. I know they got their first win, but like this coaching staff is going to be on the hot seat. If they think Tank Bigsby is going to be the best running back moving forward, I don't think they're going to care that Travis Etienne has a round one pick attached to him. If they think Tank Bigsby is going to be the guy, he's the guy they're going to be throwing in there. And so I don't think it's out of the question to see Tank Bigsby overtake this backfield. And out of all these running backs here, like a lot of them are more handcuff plays, guys who are getting opportunities due to injuries. Tank Bigsby has an opportunity to truly just overtake Travis Etienne rest of season. So definitely someone who should be rostered in way more than 10% of leagues. Then after Tank Bigsby, we have Tyrone Tracy Jr., rostered in 14.3% of leagues. I talked about him in my later in the week waiver wire video, talking about guys who could be playable in week 5. And he went out, had a monster game with Devin Singletary out. But I will say this huge game almost didn't happen because I played Tyrone Tracy in a couple of spots. I was watching out for his usage. It looked like the Giants were going to roll with Eric Gray as their running back one early on. He was leading the backfield. He had, a ton of touches on the first drive. Then he fumbles on the goal line. It gets returned for a touchdown. And pretty much Brian Dable just shifted right over to Tyrone Tracy, and he did not look back. 18 carries, 129 rushing yards, was targeted twice, caught one of those for I think just 1 yard. So not a ton of receiving production, but that is definitely in his skill set. I think Tyrone Tracy is definitely playable if Singletary continues to miss time, but I also think he has the ability to carve out a larger role. He's a rookie running back. This was a really impressive first game, kind of getting the bulk of the opportunities. I guess the issue here is that is this Giants backfield, is this Giants offense good enough to support like 2 running backs in a committee? Because Singletary really hasn't even been the best option, and he's pretty much dominating the usage. So is it really worth anything to have that committee upside? I feel like that's kind of like the question mark here. But I guess, in desperate weeks with buys, injuries, that could, make him playable. But I think maybe, he could have the upside to overtake Devin Singletary. It's not like they have an insane amount of investment in him. These rookies can come in, they can gain traction, throughout the season. So Tyrone Tracy, great game kind of operating as the handcuff. We'll see if he can be more than that going forward. Then looking at my first wide receiver here, we have Xavier Legette, rostered in 35.4% of leagues. If he is still out there, even though he had a really bad game this week, I'd still go out there and pick him up. He left very early on with a shoulder injury, so not really his fault as to why, he didn't have a great fantasy game. Overall, it was just a down game from this Panthers passing attack. So maybe, it wouldn't have amounted to much here in week 5, but I do think Legette is more of a long-term play. We saw him earn the top 2 wide receiver snaps after Adam Thielen went down in week 4, had a breakout game, went 6 for 66 and a touchdown. We're hearing reports that the Panthers might be looking to move on from Deontay Johnson, trade him if they continue losing. We could truly be looking at Xavier Legette operating as the wide receiver 1 in the second half of the season. This is a point I talk about a lot, but when these young wide receivers start to break out, They show us they're talented. You want to capitalize on it. So Xavier Legette, he showed us he was talented. He earned a starting role. I think Dave Canales is going to set him up for success. I like him here as a pickup, obviously barring him having a super serious injury, but as of right now, don't really know the severity of it. And then another wide receiver here, we saw him play on Sunday Night Football. Jalen Tolbert rostered in 7.5% of leagues, and I do think he is going to have an increased role like we saw in Week 5 with Brandon Cooks going on IR. He went out, had a monster game. He had a team-leading 10 targets, caught 7 of those for 87 yards and a touchdown. And it's not like this was like a one-off where he just completely came out of nowhere. He had been productive in a couple of games before Week 5. Week 2, he went 6 for 82. Week 3, 3 for 42 and a touchdown. Now, do I want to go out and throw him into my lineup in Week 6? Probably not, but maybe he continues to earn his role. He's a young wide receiver, and if he can stack a few consistent games here, continues earning targets, then definitely someone who could be interesting moving forward. Now, going back to the running back position, we have Ty Chandler, who's rostered in 35% of leagues. We saw Aaron Jones left early in the London game early Sunday, and then was ruled out for the rest of the game with a hip injury. After that Aaron Jones injury, Ty Chandler saw 13 carries, 2 targets, compared to 2 carries and 1 target for, I guess, the now running back 2 stepping up in Myles Gaskin. So if Aaron Jones were to miss time here, even if he was going to miss a game or two, Ty Chandler would be very, very playable as probably at worst like a top 24 running back in RB2 play. I will say, though, the Vikings have a Week 6 bye, so they definitely could have been cautious with Aaron Jones. It seems like this injury isn't super serious, so he could definitely be back, heading into Week 7 with the week of rest. But you never know. These injuries can linger. They can, re-aggravate. And so Chandler was productive last season. He got some run kind of in a committee in a split last year. He was productive. I think they like him. And like I said, he's definitely a running back too if Aaron Jones misses time. And even if he doesn't miss any time, in competitive leagues, Ty Chandler should still be rostered as a handcuff option. Definitely one of the better handcuffs out there on a very, very good offense. Another running back here is going to be Blake Corum, who is rostered in 19.8% of leagues. And he is someone who I talked about, I think, a couple of weeks ago. And what I think was interesting about Blake Corum is you drafted him to be like this elite, high-level handcuff. The problem is, early on in the season, he was not operating like the running back 2. So even if Kyren Williams went down, there was no guarantee that Blake Corum was going to step in and take all that usage because Ronnie Rivers had been operating as the running back 2. It looks like here in Week 5, Blake Corum finally overtook Ronnie Rivers as the clear-cut running back 2. He played snaps in a meaningful time in a game for the first time this season. I think the only other time was like Week 2 or 3 where he was just getting like garbage time carries. Ronnie Rivers did not play a single snap. Believe he was healthy heading into this one. Did not get on the field. So at this point, Blake Corum locked in running back 2. Now, he didn't play a huge role, 11 snaps, 5 carries, and 1 target. But he is very, very rosterable now that he is the clear-cut Kyren Williams handcuff. He was also trusted just kind of randomly with 2 goal line snaps. Didn't get into the end zone, but they were still out there. They had him in on those opportunities. Kyren Williams has handled a monster workload to start off the season. He's a fairly small back, and he also has a pretty decent injury history. So if I had to make a bet, like if they continue to force-feed Kyren Williams like this, I do not think he's playing a full 17-game season. I mean, running backs in general typically aren't playing 17 games. A smaller back with that type of injury history, I just think at some point he's going to break down. Even if he just misses a week or two, that's a week where Blake Corum could step in and be a locked-in running back 1 for that specific week. So I think at this point, he is definitely one of the more valuable handcuffs in the NFL and someone who definitely should be rostered in more than 20% of leagues. A couple more running backs here. The first one is going to be Roschon Johnson, rostered in 11.2% of leagues. At this point, he is the clear-cut Bears running back 2. Seems like Khalil Herbert has just been completely phased out of the rotation. Roschon Johnson took 10 of the 31 carries. He actually kind of saw a decrease in the goal line usage, only took 3 of the 9 goal line snaps, but it still led to 2 touchdowns, so he's getting into the end zone. He was actually leading also in the 2-minute drill snaps, the third down snaps, and the short yardage snaps. DeAndre Swift, still the clear-cut RB1 in terms of the usage, though. So right now, he's DeAndre Swift's handcuff. I know he's gotten into the end zone the last couple of games. I don't think like this Bears offense, this Bears backfield is good enough for him to be playable as like the running back 2. But DeAndre Swift, struggled first 3 weeks. Really nice week 4. Not the greatest week 5, but it's not like Roschon Johnson was much better. But I do think he has the opportunity to continue to expand on his role. And then he also does have that upside if DeAndre Swift were to go down. Now, this next running back here, kind of a deeper pull, but someone who's starting to become interesting here. It is Jeremy McNichols, who is rostered in 1.9% of leagues. And this Commanders backfield has kind of become unexpectedly very, very valuable. Like, I liked B-Rob heading into the year. I really didn't like Austin Eckler. But like looking at this backfield heading into the season, it wasn't a super desirable spot, right? I don't think people expected much from the Commanders offense. It didn't seem like a strong supporting cast for a rookie like Jaden Daniels. When you look at the running back production, when you have these mobile quarterbacks, typically it's not great, right? Because these mobile guys, they're going to vulture touchdowns near the goal line, which is obviously going to hurt running backs. They typically are not checking down a ton because their instinct, instead of to check down, is to scramble and then take off. So seems like that would be something against B-Rob. It would be something against Austin Eckler. But I mean, these guys have just been producing. Brian Robinson is averaging 15.5 PPR points per game. Austin Eckler is averaging 11.8 PPR points per game. And then in week 5, we ended up seeing them have 3 running backs score double-digit PPR points in Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, and Jeremy McNichols. McNichols broke into this backfield in week 4 when we saw Austin Eckler miss. I think that was with a concussion. He logged 8 carries for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. With Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler both active in week 5, McNichols logged 7 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. Now, I do think he got more run because I don't even know if Brian Robinson Jr. played in the second half. He was injured heading into this one. They had a commanding lead. No pun intended. And they were, not going to risk injury with Brian Robinson Jr. But I mean, McNichols, when he's been out there, he has been producing. I don't think he's going to be playable when you have a healthy Brian Robinson and a healthy Austin Eckler, even though this week he paid off. I think it was due to, B-Rob kind of being banged up. But at this point, he kind of looks like a double-headed handcuff where he saw fine usage when Austin Eckler missed. If Brian Robinson were to ever miss any time, I feel like he'd be stepping into a pretty decent workload here. So a B-Rob injury, an Austin Eckler injury could open up things for Jeremy McNichols here. And like I said, only rostered in 1.9% of leagues. Definitely someone who is going to be out there on most waiver wires. Then getting back to the wide receiver position, I have Josh Downs, who's rostered in 34.8% of leagues. And if this was, talent-wise, Josh Downs would be ranked much higher here. Coming off another big game, team leading 12 targets, went 9 for 69. That was after he went 8 for 82 and a touchdown in week 4. My issue here with Josh Downs is just the quarterback play, and I just have real concerns about Anthony Richardson's ability to actually support his fantasy wide receivers. And this is like a pretty solid wide receiver room. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, who's been good, A.D. Mitchell, who's like been getting open at a very high rate. He just hasn't necessarily converted on a lot of stuff, but should continue to get better as a rookie here. But I'm someone, like I talked about with Legette, I want to buy into these young players who have proven they're talented, who are breaking out, and Downs definitely fits that. So even if I don't love the quarterback situation, we've seen guys overcome it. He didn't really have Downs. I think his first game was week 3, so he didn't have Downs in the early weeks. Maybe he's the guy who kind of unlocks Richardson's underneath passing. I'm a little bit skeptical, but Downs is talented, back-to-back strong games, not going to throw him away because of the quarterback question mark. So definitely someone who's worth being rostered. I will say, though, if you can sell high because someone isn't going to know the difference between Flacco and Richardson, I definitely would. The one tight end I have in this video obviously could be pushed up priority-wise based on your roster needs. But Tyler Conklin, rostered in 37.2% of leagues. This was his second best game of the season. 9 targets, 6 receptions for 55 yards. He has been targeted 23 times in the last 3 games. That is very solid, volume for a potential waiver wire tight end. Coming into this game, Conklin was second in snap share, second in slot snaps, and then first in routes run. So his usage has been very, very strong. He had another solid game of it, 79% route participation in week 5. So I think he's definitely playable as a fringe tight end 1. I think some people might think he's going to become irrelevant if the Jets trade for Devontae Adams, but I don't necessarily know if that's the case. I think that might actually help him out because he's going to have more touchdown upside. Things are going to be a little bit, more open for him here. So Tyler Conklin, definitely someone who I think is playable and could potentially be like a tight end solution for you rest of season. And then the final running back I want to dive into here, definitely a deep sleeper. It is Kimani Vidal, rostered in 0.8% of leagues. And he's a deep sleeper here because he has been a healthy and active for all 4 Chargers games. The Chargers have run out kind of like their 2 clear top 2 running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. J.K. Dobbins had the huge first 2 weeks, last 2 a little questionable, but he's been productive. Gus Edwards has been one of the worst running backs in the NFL. He has the 2nd worst rushing yards over expected per attempt. For running backs with 18 plus carries, Gus Edwards has the 2nd fewest missed tackles forced. He has forced 1 missed tackle on 38 carries. The man has no juice. The production has not been there. And so the Chargers, coming off a bye week, I don't think it would be shocking to see Kimani Vidal overtake Gus Edwards. We can see that, with these young players, the bye week can be big for them. Now, this is early on in the season, so maybe it doesn't have the same impact, but teams are able to kind of look inwards. They could see like Gus Edwards is not getting it done. We have this young rookie. Maybe we give him a shot moving forward. And at that point, if he can overtake Gus Edwards, you're a J.K. Dobbins injury away from being the lead back on a run-heavy team. And, based on recent years, a J.K. Dobbins injury does not seem like it's out of the question here. So Kimani Vidal, if the waiver wire is picked clean, I think he is someone who's interesting. And then I'll just run through a few like handcuff options. Justice Hill, Jaleel McLaughlin, Trey Benson, Emmanuel Wilson, all those guys become super interesting with an injury to the clear-cut starter, but I don't know if there's a ton of juice like week to week or upside of them like, overtaking the current running back one. But that is going to wrap it up for my top waiver wire targets. If you guys enjoyed, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, drop them down below. But thank you for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.